My name is Natalie. I've noticed the startling similarities between Kaladin and Jean Valjean from Les Mis. So today, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the similarities between Kaladin from The Way of Kings and Jean Valjean from Les Miserables. Going to be a little bit different, not only because my dog Mishka has decided to join me, but also because I'm going to be talking about a musical and not just books. Now that my dog has so kindly gone back over to her bed, I'm going to be talking about the plots of both The Way of Kings and Les Mis, and to hopefully shine light on the similarities between Kaladin and Jean Valjean. Now, I have already made a non-spoiler review about The Way of Kings. You can go check that out on my channel, but if you don't want to go watch that entire video, even though it's probably my most watched video on YouTube right now and you should totally check it out, I will give you a quick plot summary of The Way of Kings. Essentially, there is a war between these two people, the Alethi and the Parshendi. And one of the Alethi that the book kind of revolves around is a man named Kaladin. And he is extremely brave and extremely strong, and his life was practically ruined by this war and everything that's going on. Now, since I do not have a video about Les Miserables, more commonly referred to as Les Mis, I am going to give a broader summary about that musical. Now, I know it's also a book and it's also a movie, but what I'm going to be talking today is the original London cast Broadway production of it, and from what I know about it through the lyrics. The story follows a man named Jean Valjean. At the beginning of the story, you see him going, ah, 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 which is the prologue. This is where he is in a chain gang with a bunch of other people, and he is a prisoner. And we even get the line, "Now bring me prisoner 24601, your time is up and your parole's begun." You know what that means. And Jean Valjean screams, "Yes, it means I'm free." This is probably one of the most important things that I want to emanate in this video, that both Jean Valjean and Kaladin were prisoners at some time and were even slaves. After Jean Valjean gets out of his chain gang, he begins to try and form his life and ends up stealing from a bishop. Everybody is completely stunned. Well, maybe not stunned, because they expect this behavior from him. And they want to throw him back in jail, essentially. And the bishop says, "No, I gave him those candlesticks because that's what he stole, and he didn't do anything wrong." And then he pulls Valjean aside and says, "Hey, look, I know you stole these things, but there's a different way to live your life, and that is through God. I want you to give your soul over to God, and he'll guide your path, and I saved your life, and I saved you, and I told them this because I know that you're better than this, essentially. And I want you to have your best chance. I understand why you're doing the things you're doing. You don't have money. You need help. And God is your path to redemption." After Valjean agrees to basically commit his life to God and to the goodness inside of him, he turns his life around. He adopts this little girl named Cosette. He absolutely makes her life amazing, even though he's running away from the law a lot, and there's a guy named Javert who wants to bring him back to prison and believes that prisoner 24601, aka Jean Valjean, is his destiny to find. Valjean somehow remains pretty much hidden, and he is able to make really a life with himself and out of himself. But let's skip that part of his narrative. We're going to skip to the end part of the narrative and bring him home. Now, if you've never heard the song Bring Him Home, I suggest you stop this video, go type into YouTube Bring Him Home, and listen to it, because it is one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard. It's actually a song that is a prayer, and a lot of people even revere it, even though it is very religious, and apparently this society doesn't like that thing anymore. But Les Mis is still huge, and it's essentially a religious-based musical. But this is the really important part at the end. When he's in the battle, what does Jean Valjean do after he is discovered? What does he do to completely and utterly make that promise true? Valjean starts to sing this song called Bring Him Home, and if you haven't heard that song, I suggest you stop this video and go listen to it now, as it is an extremely beautiful song, and it's also a prayer, which is even more powerful. A lot of things in this culture today are de-religiousified, if that's a word, but Les Mis remains to be a religious musical, and I think that's a powerful thing to remember. And this song is even revered for it, which is amazing. What's important, though, about this song is that Valjean is saying it to protect this kid named Marius, who is in a battle. Valjean sneaks into this battle to fight with all of these kids because he knows that most of them will die. And he wants to protect Marius because Marius loves his stepdaughter, or adopted daughter, Cosette. This amazing about this is because he prays for Marius. Valjean and Marius are the only two to survive the battle. Valjean continues to fight, and he even brings Marius's injured body back to the house. He is fighting in a war, and I think it's important to remember that Valjean, even though he wasn't that into this whole war thing, and that he was kind of just stepping in to make sure that he could help, and that all these kids whose lives were, he thought, way more valuable than his own would not die, he still fought in the battle. He was still wearing the jacket, he still had the gun, he still was fighting. And I think it's important to remember that Valjean, at a point, was a soldier. Now let's change gears here a little bit. Who else do we know that was a slave and a soldier? Kaladin, from The Way of Kings. Think about it. At the very beginning of the book, Kaladin is working as a surgeon's apprentice. He's trying to save lives. What does Valjean do in that final battle? He saves Marius's life. There's the first similarity between the two. The second similarity is, let's think again. What was Valjean at the beginning of Les Mis? Well, he was a slave. He was part of a chain gang. In the song prologue of Les Mis, or a work if you'd like to call it that, is essentially the chain gang singing that there's no hope for them. They're all slaves, and they're all just trying to get by. Now, who else was a slave for most of this book? Kaladin. Are you seeing where I'm going with this? Valjean and Kaladin were both slaves who wanted to help people, who were scared of revealing their true identity. Valjean doesn't want people to know who he is, especially Javert, because that would mean that he would go back to prison and go back to the chain gang. There's even a whole song called Who Am I, where he discusses about giving up his identity to save another. He does not want his identity to be known. On the flip side of this, Kaladin does not want his identity to be known because he's actually, this is a spoiler if you've never read The Way of Kings, this is a big spoiler. He was a shard bearer, and he actually won a shard from someone, and he refused to use it, but he had it. And after that, and after he declined this very powerful thing, it was the people that he was fighting with and his main commanding officer, who turned him into a slave and then took his shard blade and actually killed the rest of Kaladin's men. So that's really fun. But yeah, if you haven't read The Way of Kings, you don't know that, but hopefully you just listened to my spoiler alert and didn't just hear that, because I was shocked when I heard that. Anyway, what's important to know is that Kaladin doesn't want people to actually know that he didn't do anything wrong, because then there'd be a lot of questions that would circulate and a lot of things that would be wrong. And he tries to keep his identity very secret at the very beginning of the book, because he knows if someone finds out, then they're going to find out about his past, and they're going to find out that he's actually a shard bearer and that he has special abilities. So both Valjean and Kaladin want to keep their identities secret, and they both want to save lives, and they both are slaves at some point in the musical and the book. Then there's that one important factor that I was talking about before, the concept of a soldier. Now, we know very well from the very beginning of The Way of Kings that Kaladin is a soldier. He thinks like one, he fights like one, he rose in the ranks higher than almost anyone in his unit. He's extremely smart and extremely battle-minded, and he knows how to think about these things. But he also really cares about the lives on the battlefield and really cares about his men. Let's take that to Valjean. Valjean fought so he could save the boys. And who did he particularly want to save? Marius. And he ended up being able to do that. Unfortunately for Kaladin, and this is another spoiler, just so you guys know, Kaladin was not able to save his brother, Ten. And he really wanted to, and he was also not able to save all of the people in his unit because they were all killed by the commanding officer. This similarity of them both being soldiers who want to save people should not be ignored. This is one of the biggest things that's a commonality between both Kaladin and Valjean. There's one more important thing that I would like to note. While Valjean turned his life around for God, Kaladin knows the beauty of every human life. At the end of the novel, and yes, this is a spoiler, I said the end of the novel, okay? You got it? Okay, cool. At the end of the novel, Dalinar asks Kaladin how much a human life is worth. And I mentioned this in my non-spoiler review of The Way of Kings and in a very small spoiler section of that. It's my favorite part in the book because he says a human life is priceless. And I would tend to say that Valjean would agree the same thing. A human life is priceless. That's why he agreed to save Marius. And even more so, why in the song, Who Am I? He screams his name at the end. I am Jean Valjean 24601. I am, and I will not let this innocent man go to prison for me. I will not let his innocent actions be taken for granted. I won't let him step in my place. And Kaladin is very much the same. He won't let someone step in his place. He's very much, I need to be the one that gets all the bad treatment. You can see this when he is put outside of the bunkhouse and even survives a high storm. He won't let anybody get into trouble for him, and I think that that's very important as another commonality between the two. They won't let anybody go for them because it hurts their actions. They won't let others get hurt or die or be mistaken for them. They very much believe in their own identity, and they want to make sure that no one else is responsible for their bad actions or even for their good actions, because we know that both Valjean and Kaladin have many faults, but they also have a lot of good things about them. I think we can also say that we agree with what Valjean did at the beginning of the book. Yes, he stole, but he stole bread because his sister's son needed it. He needed to help them and help support his family. And it's pretty much the same reason that Kaladin declined the Shard Blade, is because he didn't want to be better than anyone else, and he didn't think he deserved that honor, and he wanted to just protect his people, and he didn't want to be seen as, well, Light Eyes, as seen as a great, crazy person. He just wanted to be seen as equal, and I think that's another important thing, is Valjean and Kaladin both wanted to be seen as equal members of society, not as better or as bad. Now, there aren't just similarities between Valjean and Kaladin, there are also some small similarities between plot. There is a war that is devastating people and that is hurting people and that's causing a lot of bad things to happen. You can see this in Les Mis, where all of the kids are fighting and are dying. You can see this in The Way of Kings, where they're conscripting children to fight, including 13-year-old Ten, who's barely tall enough to fight or even hold a bayonet, and that's just not fair. Perhaps I shouldn't say bayonet, perhaps I should say spear, because that is what they fight with. They don't really have guns. Sorry. There's one more thing that I'd like to point out that's a similarity between the musical and the novel, and that is the compassion that Jean Valjean has for his fellow soldiers and for the kids at the end of the musical, and the compassion that Kaladin has for his fellow bridgemates. This key characteristic that connects the two is one of the most beautiful things that anyone can tell in a story, the character's heart. So, after watching this video, I hope that I've shed some light on what war can do to characters and how war can actually build a really beautiful character. I loved Kaladin from the very start of this book because of his complex nature. From a surgeon's apprentice to a soldier to a slave, that's amazing. I mean, the amount of care that he had for his people was so refreshing. And it's seen in Les Mis too, how much Valjean cares for all the children at the very end. So once again, I hope I have shed some light on the similarities between Kaladin Stormblessed and Jean Valjean, Prisoner 24601. Bye, and thanks, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and let me know if you want more similarity videos and more comparisons, and also theory videos. Bye guys, thanks!